Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Carnage Reviews. My name is Eric. Today's movie was controversial from the get go. Some of it was self created, and some of it was earned. I am talking about Nick Palumbo's Murder Set Pieces. Back in the day, when I first saw the trailer for Murder Set Pieces, I have to admit, it really got my attention. It touted itself as the first American horror film to be rated NC-17, which technically isn't true because Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer was actually responsible for that rating being created. So, really, Henry would be the first NC-17 rated horror film in America. And I actually don't think Murder Set Pieces was ever officially given an NC-17 rated rating. I could be wrong on that, and if I am, let me know, but I don't think it ever was. I remember Murder Set Pieces being talked a lot about on message boards, such as Dread Central and Fangoria. Those were the two main horror message boards I used to be on back in the day. And for those of you who don't know what a message board is, maybe you're too young to remember, is basically a page or website where users can post on certain subjects, such as horror films or whatever, and other people can comment back. Is basically what we used to argue with each other before there was Facebook. A lot of the posts on these message boards about murder set pieces were actually from people involved in the film production who were pretending to be fans of the movie, and this caused a lot of annoyance among users who could see right through this. It caused so much of a stir at one point that I think it was Dread Central. They refused to even mention the movie by name on their website. Now, during this time, there were a lot of filmmakers and production companies doing the same thing, going on message boards and pretending to be fans of the film to promote their work. Now, I'm not defending this at all, but my point is simply that the people behind Murder Set Pieces weren't the only ones doing this. In fact, when I interned for a certain production company that I won't name, they actually encouraged us to do the same thing, to go on message boards, pretending to be fans and promote their work. So it seemed to be a pretty common practice back then. I think that due to the aggressive marketing Murder Set Pieces had, it just led to some really sour grapes, and which in turn led to some really bad reviews. This movie just got lambasted by some sites and people. Eventually, the film would get picked up by Lionsgate, who were releasing a lot of horror films during this time period, especially controversial horror films. Now, it didn't get a theatrical release. It was put on direct-to-video or direct-to-DVD in this case, and it was rated R. So, not an NC-17 rating as it was advertised originally. And the film was heavily cut too. Nick Palumbo released his own version of the film, the director's cut on DVD, which I think was released before the Lionsgate release. I'm pretty sure, anyways. And so there's actually three different cuts of this movie. And let me just make sure I'm getting this right here. I have it on my notes here. So there are three different cuts of this movie. There's the director's cut, which is the cut that Nick Palumbo released on his own on DVD. And that version is 91 minutes long. And then there's the theatrical cut, which is the version that was supposed to be NC-17, I guess. And that was 105 minutes, which is longer than the director's cut, which I'll get to that in a little bit. And then there's the Lionsgate version of the film, which is 83 minutes. So as you can see here, there's quite a bit of difference in these time frames here. So the director's cut is shorter than the theatrical version due to Nick Palumbo not being quite happy with the pacing in certain scenes in the theatrical cut. So he trimmed some scenes down and then took some stuff out altogether, and he added in a new opening in the director's cut that opens with a quote from Jack the Ripper, apparently, which I'm not really quite sure if that actually is a real quote or not. And then there's also some footage of 9/11 with some narration from a little girl. Massacre Video, those same nutcases who put out Tumbling Doll of Flesh on DVD, recently put Murder Set Pieces out for the first time on Blu-ray 4K. That's right, Murder Set Pieces is now in 4K, and it contains both the theatrical version and the director's cut. Now, unfortunately, the director's cut is not in 4K, but it is in HD, so there's that. And also, from what I understand, the theatrical version, the 105-minute version, has never actually got an official release, so this is really the first time that a lot of people will be seeing this version of the film. And my review will be of both the director's cut and the theatrical version. Murder Set Pieces was directed by Nick Palumbo. It stars Sven Garrett, Jade Risser, Gunnar Hansen, Serena Vincent, and Tony Todd. I'm not really sure why Gunnar Hansen, Serena Vincent, and Tony Todd are listed as starring in the movie, as they all have small roles, but in any case, rest in peace Gunnar Hansen and Tony Todd. Murder Set Pieces is the sensitive tale of an unnamed man simply credited as the photographer, prowling the streets of Las Vegas killing women. He is of German descent and a World War II buff. His tellings of the war are a bit warped, though.
He was a hero, you know? He fought the bad guys during the Second World War.
Yeah. But wasn't he German?
Jade, a young girl whose older sister is dating the photographer, knows something is off about the guy and keeps trying to convince her sister and her friend. The photographer continues to become more unhinged as he feeds his bloodlust again and again.
And you are the biggest part of the problem. The biggest fucking problem is you!
So I think I saw Murder Set Pieces for the first time around 2007, 2008, and it was the R-rated version, the Lionsgate version that I saw. And it was on FearNet, which I don't know if you guys remember what FearNet is. FearNet was a horror channel, horror network, owned by Comcast. And on the website, they would have free movies that you could stream. I think maybe like 4 or 5 movies, usually maybe for like a month or so, and then they would switch it up. And there was one day that I was browsing on the website, and I saw Murder Set Pieces on there. So I decided to check it out. To be honest, after watching the movie, I can't really remember what I thought about it back then. I do know that I was really curious what the director's cut was like. I think maybe I thought the movie was average at the time, but I can't really remember, to be honest with you. I do know that you can still get the R-rated version, the Lionsgate version on DVD. It's on Amazon for like $40, which is way too high, in my opinion, to pay for that. If you're gonna spend that kind of money, you can get the Massacre video version for a lot cheaper than that. And it contains the theatrical version and the director's cut version, which are the versions that the director probably would prefer that you see. So definitely, if you want to buy this movie and see it, go with the Massacre video release because that's the best version that you can get. Murder Set Pieces gets a ton of hate, but really, it's not that bad of a movie as long as you know what you're getting into. There really is not much of a story, and there's hardly any character development. And as the title suggests, it really is just a bunch of murders happening on screen. While the film is graphic, it's not as graphic as you would think. Don't get me wrong, there are some brutal scenes in this movie, but it's the way they're executed. Probably the most graphic scenes are the 2 rape scenes. I'm not gonna lie, those 2 scenes made me really uncomfortable, which is the whole point of those scenes, so for that, I applaud the movie. Keep in mind that Murder Set Pieces came out in 2004. This was before a Serbian film or The Human Centipede Part 2 came out. So perhaps that's why this film doesn't seem as graphic. There are 2 scenes in Murder Set Pieces that the movie got a lot of shit for back at the time of its release. And I don't know if these scenes are in the rated version. I can't remember if they are. If they are, they're probably really trimmed down or just they were taken out altogether. But the first scene involves the killer killing a child. And I gotta say, the way that they handled this was really, really ballsy. And I give Nick Palumbo a lot of credit for tackling a subject like that. It was a really ballsy move. And you could call it exploitive, sure, but the harsh reality is that children do get killed. It's a reality, a dark reality, but a reality nonetheless. The second scene involves the photographer getting into an argument with a woman that he knows. We don't know what the relationship is, but they definitely know each other. It's implied that they have a baby together. At least I think the baby in the movie is his. But anyways, he kills this woman and he goes into the baby's room and the baby's screaming and crying. And he picks the baby up, and his hands are all bloody, and the blood gets on the baby and all this stuff. And the baby is clearly terrified for real. Like, there's no acting there. The baby is fucking freaked out. In the movie, it's pretty clear that the photographer hates women, which stems from his relationship that he had with his mother. We don't know exactly what type of relationship they had, but it's pretty clear and heavily implied that it wasn't a good one. And there was an interview I read with Nick Palumbo, and I apologize, I can't remember what website it was from, so I apologize for not citing it. But in the interview, he talked about how the scene where he kills the girl, he kills her because he doesn't want her to grow up. And I guess when he's speaking German, he's telling her this, how he doesn't want her to grow up. So I guess in his mind, he's saving her from becoming a woman, which is what he hates the most. As far as the scene with the baby goes, perhaps in the photographer's own twisted mind, him killing this woman is him protecting the baby from this woman. Since he sees women as evil, perhaps he's protecting his own son from the influence of women. And in his mind, he's doing the right thing. Now, as far as the ethical dilemma a scene like this faces on whether it was justified to include a child this young in a scene like this, well, I can just assume that every precaution was taken to protect the child during the filming of this. Murder Set Pieces is really similar to the film Maniac. In fact, before Maniac was remade, you could almost call Murder Set Pieces a spiritual remake of Maniac. Now, the remake of Maniac came out in 2012. And what's interesting is that the remake of Maniac and Murder Set Pieces are very similar in the way they incorporate flashbacks and dream sequences. In fact, the relationship with the photographer's mother, the way it's shown, is really similar to how it's shown in Maniac. Now, unlike Maniac, Murder Set Pieces doesn't come out and tell you that this woman is the photographer's mother, but it's pretty obvious that she is from the get-go. I really like the way certain scenes look, especially in the photographer's house. You can tell that Palumbo was really inspired by Dario Argento's Suspiria. The use of blues and reds are really colorful and vibrant here. There are some really effective and well-done shots in the movie too, such as this one here, where the camera is slowly pulling out from the doll's face, and you could hear the photographer in the background hurting a woman. It's really unsettling. Some of the music in Murder Set Pieces is really good too, and it makes you feel like you're watching an Italian horror film. I wish we got more of that soundtrack than the hard rock music that we got in certain scenes. Now, I like Bronx Casket Company, but the songs they used in the movie really don't fit. Sowing the Dead is a good song, though. For fans of the August Underground film series, we get a cameo from Fred Vogel and Kirstie Willis. Toe Tag actually did the effects work in the film, and I gotta say, the FX in this film look really good. The Horror Geek does an episode of Sick Flicks on Murder Set Pieces, and in his video, he mentions how the photographer seems to leave a lot of DNA and evidence around, and I have to agree with that. For a dude that's a serial killer, he certainly is sloppy and doesn't really try to cover anything up. Since making Murder Set Pieces, Nick Palumbo has not made a new movie. I would be really curious to see what he could do outside of the serial killer subgenre. Murder Set Pieces is essentially a remake of his debut film called Nutbag. Between the director's cut and the theatrical cut, I actually think I prefer the theatrical cut. In the director's cut, I understand why Palumbo trimmed certain things down, but he also took some stuff out that I think was really good. For example, in the theatrical version, there's a really good dream sequence that's not in the director's cut, and I think it's very effective when well done, and he should have kept it.
Hi, my name is Kelly. I am 19 years old. I am 19 years old. Kelly. Take my picture!
Murder Set Pieces gets a ton of hate, but really, it's a fairly decent movie. It's pure exploitation, so if you're thinking you're going to get a deep dive into the mind of a serial killer, you're definitely not going to get that here. However, if you like watching fucked up movies, there's something here that you'll probably like. Also, the 4K restoration looks surprisingly really good. Like, I was blown away how good it looked. It took a long time for this Massacre video release to come out. I pre-ordered it like a long time ago, at least a year ago, I think. And it came out in I don't know, late October, maybe early November. I can't remember, but it took a long time. But it definitely was worth it, I would say, because it's a really good looking 4K. And who would have thought that we would live in a time where Murder Set Pieces is on 4K? But with all that said and done, I give Murder Set Pieces 3.5 skulls. Have you seen Murder Set Pieces? Did you pick up the 4K release? Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know which version of the film do you prefer, the director's cut or the theatrical cut. Also, if you enjoyed today's video, please give that like button a good old smacky smack. Well, that's it for me today, my friends. Remember, if you're a woman and a German dude walks up to you wanting to take your picture, and said German dude has a scowl on his face, run far, far away. Bye-bye, guys.